Chair now recognizes Mr. McDowell for his 5 minutes of question.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Admiral, for being here today to testify before the subcommittee. I'm glad to see that modernization of Coast Guard IT systems is a priority in Force Design 28, particularly the long-awaited and greatly anticipated modernization of the antiquated merchant mariner credentialing program. Are mariner licensing examinations part of the proposed transformation of the mariner credentialing program, and how will that be accomplished?
Congressman, the improving the technology systems that we use for mariner licensing and credentialing is critically important. That's a part of the way forward, as you mentioned, and also making sure that the training and certification process that is provided by schools for mariners that the Coast Guard is responsible for overseeing, that continues to meet the high standards necessary for mariners to be able to develop the skills and competencies and qualifications necessary. This is also vital given the President's direction and the executive order to restore America's maritime dominance. And part of that is by reinvigorating our merchant marine. And so that remains and will be a top priority going forward, sir.
Is course approval process part of the proposed transformation of the credentialing program, and how will that be accomplished?
So the course credentialing program and the approval process is already a high priority because of some challenges we've seen in the last several years. But I will commit to you, we will bring that into our efforts that are part of restoring our effort, the Coast Guard's contribution to restore America's maritime dominance, because it's a critical component of our mariners being able to operate and do their job.
Admiral, when this subcommittee met in March, we had a conversation about the Coast Guard's aging infrastructure and assets, and at one point we were talking about the Coast Guard continuing to operate vessels with literal holes in them, which I'm no expert in ships, but that's a problem. And the Coast Guard has historically struggled with the recapitalization effort, since the service must maintain day-to-day operations, which result in assets that are operated well beyond their service life. And so a lack of access to funding obviously contributed to this problem. But today, however, we have an influx of congressional support for historic levels of funding, which seems to be unacknowledged in the Coast Guard's budget request. Can you explain the reason for the discrepancies between the Coast Guard's relatively modest budget request and the $21 billion recapitalization investment provided for in the House Budget's reconciliation bill?
Well, Congressman, I would say that the FY26 President's budget reflects a strong start in the right direction, with over a $1 billion increase between PCI and ONS, that, along with the significant historic investment levels that budget reconciliation reflect, will give a significant move in the right direction to restore Coast Guard readiness. And of course, that will need to be matched in the following years by a stronger top line for both PCI and ONS to continue to rebuild and restore Coast Guard readiness.
One of the most important things to me is making sure that you all have what you need to do drug interdiction as these drugs try to come into our country. What is the single most helpful thing we could do to give you the tools you need to stop fentanyl trafficking, human trafficking? Obviously, you all are doing a fantastic job this year with catching these criminals, but what's the single most helpful thing we can do?
Congressman, the work that we're doing to control and secure and defend our borders from illegal drug trafficking that brings death and destruction to our communities, including in fentanyl, is one of our top priorities. We talk about the importance of search and rescue, but that mission saves lives just as much as search and rescue does. And so in terms of the top priority, I would say that the shipbuilding acquisitions to deliver the offshore patrol cutter, which will replace our aging 210-foot fleet, the ships that you described that often have holes in them, and then our not quite as old but still old 270-foot cutters. Those offshore patrol cutters will give advanced technology and capability But it will also be matched by investments in our boats and our advanced sensors and technology that enable our boarding teams who are doing this work at the tactical edge against adversaries who are smuggling these drugs linked to the cartels, who are many designated as foreign terrorist organizations. That will give them the advantage that they need to be successful, to be able to get that mission done and return home safely.
Thanks, sir. Yield back.
Gentleman yields.